Hi all, I think that's my first wolf whistle about short documentary. So this is a great day, off to a great start. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Caitlin May Burke. We can go to the first slide of the presentation. And this is Art of the Pitch. This is Merrill Sterritt. And we'll go to the second one. This is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about pitching. We're going to talk about it in several different ways, and sort of as setting up a toolkit and also thinking about this as a development exercise. You can apply some of these things that we're going to say to just generally how you think about your project, and it doesn't have to be always in this very kind of like formal academic setting. But let's go to the next slide. This is also, I will say, kind of like a fun size version of this. I could personally talk about pitching for like 4 hours without a break, but you all need a break and we have other stuff to do. So take this as an outline. There's going to be a lot of text on screen. If you want to take pictures of it, refer back to it, you are welcome to do so. So a little bit of a guide to what we're going to be doing. Also, I am a New York area Jew, and so I'm going to talk super fast, and I'm just going to own that. I'm going to try to slow down. I got 15 minutes. I'm going to go through sort of formal forum-style pitching, what you would be doing in a formal presentation. Then we will see an example of that, and then Merrill is going to go through interpersonal, sort of one-on-one pitching. But first, in the next slide, I'm going to tell you who we are and why you should listen to us. If Then Shorts is a filmmaker, and it's a short documentary fund, mentorship, and filmmaker advocacy program. We're housed at Field of Vision. We have been working for 7 years exclusively with short documentaries on breaking barriers to access for filmmakers. And the way that we define that, which is always sort of expansive, those barriers can include race, gender, sex, sexuality, class, and geography, which is why a lot of our work is community-oriented storytelling with filmmakers outside of New York and LA. We have supported over 100 projects at this point, and if you want to talk about a short documentary, we're your guys. Our website is there if you want to learn more. Next slide. The other thing that's important to us is that we are very keen on field testing what we're saying. This is not exclusively meant to be like, we are experts, we're just going to give you a template, and it's the template because we said so. I'm a working filmmaker. I'm actively pitching work. I pitched at Tribeca earlier. I have 2 projects pitching the Czech Republic next week. And so I am also working to take all of the advice that I'm about to give you, apply it to my own creative practice, and hear from other people if it works for them or not. And so we've sort of been on both sides of the table and want to make this a more transparent and encouraging place, which is where the filmmaker advocacy side of this comes through. All right, let's get into the meat of what we're doing. Next slide. I'm going to be covering the ABCs of pitching, which is really just a group of W's and H's with some T's at the end. So those are, next slide, what is the story you're telling? Why does it need to be told? How do you plan to get it done? And who are you? And the little asterisk, you're the best person to tell the story. So I'm going to go, this is just a framing device to make sure that I cover the different areas. This is not meant to be the order that you present this material. And this is a lot of material to cover in the 7 to 10 minutes that you'll get if you're doing this type of pitch. So this is meant as a guide. You can take some of this, you can leave it, and you'll find as you're pitching your work what people are responding to and how you might want to integrate that more or less. So I have...
Do you want to describe
what
the forum?
Yeah, for sure. When we're talking about this sort of like formal or forum style pitch, this is a forum that sort of originated in Europe, where you're either standing like this and doing a presentation, or you're seated at a round table where you're pitching to industry, anyone from a funder, a state funder, a festival programmer, an arts organization, and you're doing this sort of like contained presentation, and then they will give you a response, questions, set up meetings afterwards. This is happening in the US at Big Sky. It's going to happen in New Orleans next month. It's happening, I'm trying to think where else. We were just brainstorming on this. But there are a couple of festivals that also have markets that have this sort of pitch presentation. And so it's just a useful skill to bring into your toolbox when you're talking about your work. And doing this like very condensed version can also be helpful as you're thinking about what's important to you. Putting it down on paper might clarify in your development process what you want the artistic emphasis to be as well. All right, let's go to the first W, which is what is the story you're telling? This is a log line and not a synopsis. I say 30 words or less. 7 minutes is a super short amount of time. You could flex to 50, but why if you could instead do it in 30? This should include not only what is the story, but sort of the who and the when and the where of it. We're talking about locations. We're talking about participants, which I'll get into a little bit more depth on. We're talking about the situation as well, and that should be included in that brief setup. That doesn't have to be all in the 30 words, but this is where in your pitch you're going to bring it up. This is the way that people start to have a sense of what you're talking about, which you will then expand on through the rest of your pitch. This is also a great thing to practice at parties, at film festivals. Watching people's body language as you give those 30 words in your log line and hearing the questions that they're asking you is a great way to tell what you need to clarify, what's interesting to people, and what's kind of boring. That if you do your log line and everyone's like, oh, okay, and then they ask someone else a question, you need to make a better hook. Or if you see them like really leaning in at a certain point and then kind of having that attention shift, you can change your language based on those responses. This is also the part where you're going to cover who your main participants are. And I get this question all the time. If I'm early in development, if I'm just entering a community, I don't know that it's like Andrew at the dry cleaners or Mary who's a blacksmith, but I know that I want to find a dry cleaner and a blacksmith. What do I do about this? If you have an Andrew and a Mary, I need to know a little bit about their world. And if you don't, then you can totally include archetypes, but this is just, again, laying the groundwork for who's going to be in the film. It's just clarifying for us who are we going to meet and really starting to paint like a word picture of what the project is. You can also, if you are not doing a character-driven film, your who can be your locations or your thematic elements. And then if you do not listen to a single thing I say for like the rest of all of the talkie, this is the most important thing that I'm going to say. It's the only note I want you to take. What will we see on screen? So often in nonfiction, we fall in the trap of doing a topic summary or telling a story, and that's the only material that comes out in a pitch, which does not mean that the topic of your film is not deeply fascinating, but it does not tell me what will be in a film, which is an audio-visual medium of storytelling. There are a lot of really great topics that have been exceptional articles and podcasts. And this is the place in your pitch where I need to know what your artistic approach will be so that I know you're not making one of them. I think we've all also seen documentary series that probably should have been podcasts, or they made a podcast and it was better than the film. This is the place where we want to know about your artistic vision and saying what are those different tools or styles you're going to make so that we can start seeing this as a film. Okay, next slide. Why does this story need to be told? This is where you become a very brief expert on the facts of the story and the backstory. This is giving the sort of larger global context. You are our expert while you're pitching. Everything you're saying is true and it's important, and so you should only include the things that are most important for us to know. You also want to talk about the sort of timeliness of your story. A pitch is something that is meant to generate a result, and we'll get into what those results can be in a little bit. But this is creating this sense of urgency, and the timeliness is one element which is going to help get someone who has funding in your corner so that you can complete the film not in 7 years, but so that an audience can see it now. We need to know why now. If your film is evergreen, that does not mean that you can't talk about timeliness. There is no time but the present for you to make your film, even if making it in 10 years, it would be the same story. You can be talking about the discovery of this footage that you're using, or that you are getting unique access to something, or that it's something that could start a conversation or continue a conversation, or just good representation of the people who are on screen. That doesn't mean that it has to be a story that's like a breaking news story for it to be something that's in kind of the like current zeitgeist. The other thing, and this is where I mention like, oh, it's the first to do this. Being aware of what other people are doing in documentary is incredibly key to be pitching your project. So I like to tell everyone to build on the field. If someone is working in a similar topic area, if they're working with similar material, you can still make your film. No one is licking the cookie here. Like there's enough space for there to be a tray full of cookies that all have the same ingredients and everyone can get one. But you need to acknowledge if there are other films that are happening in the same area, that you're aware of them and that yours is unique and delicious and like something that people also need to see. When I talk about saying you're the first of anything, most people in this industry are big nerds and we're getting pitched all the time. And so you need to be very clear of whether you're actually the first person to do something or the only person to have access, because no one is going to be too competitive about this or try to like cut you down in the middle of a pitch. But we're excited nerds, so we talk and we're like, oh, I just saw a pitch for this film that they're the first people to ever like, you know, go on this roller coaster. And then Merrill says, oh, that's funny. Is it these people who, and then I find out that there's 5 films that are all on the same roller coaster. Doesn't mean your film can't exist. Ron Howard made a film about the Paradise Fires in California. I've watched other filmmakers pitch the same natural disaster, but theirs is focused on individuals who stayed. And they acknowledged the Ron Howard film, which like has $1 billion and like already had distribution while they were pitching their work. We're saying like, we're members of the community. We've spent months living in a tent next to the places they've resettled. And there was a lot of interest in that film because it wasn't the big guys just like coming in, spending a bunch of money, making a big thing, and then leaving town. There was interest in having that other perspective. So if they didn't acknowledge it and they froze up in that question, then there's the question of like, why does this film need to exist if the other one does? They instead inserted in their pitch a clear bit of language of why it does. You also just want to talk about stakes. You want this to be urgent. You want everyone that if you don't get whatever you want out of this pitch, then like everything is awful because you need to like go to Ethiopia next month and shoot for 2 years or whatever. And if they don't fund you, then that won't happen and then no one will know the story. Stakes get you funding, and they also create this sort of engagement with whoever the decision maker is, that they can be an essential part of your process in getting this essential story for all these reasons out to the world. All right, next slide. How do you plan to get it done? If you have a producer, this is generally where they come in and they're like, isn't my director amazing? Let me say some logical things. This is where you're talking about your project status and being super clear. How far along are you? What do you need to get finished? Who's already on board? Who are you interested in having come on board? This is important for another reason, because it contextualizes your footage and the other elements of the conversation you're talking about, like potentially your budget gap. If I know you're in development or early production and you need to raise $400,000, I'm not sweating it. If you are finished and about to premiere your film, I'm sweating it in a different way. Also, if I'm watching your footage and the edit is really kind of like an assembly and it's really like it's not color corrected, it's just earlier. If I know you're in development, I'm completely comfortable with that because I can project what the film will be when it's polished. If you're about to premiere, I would expect you to have a little bit more of a coherent sample. So that's where doing all of your, this conversation around your project status comes in. You also want to talk about your access to your story and your protagonists. And Be realistic about what has been secured and what's in process. It's fine to say that things are in process, but also you don't have to say that things are further along than you are. This is also creating the world of the movie where we're saying, who are your collaborators? Are those the people who are on the ground? Are they other people who run nonprofit organizations in the topic area? Are they other film organizations that have already either given you a letter of reference or indication of support? Have they given you funding? It's building this world of, if I were to write you a check for your gap tomorrow, how will this make it onto the screen, and who else will be along for the ride as you're doing it? When I talk about a gap and I'm only talking about money, I actually think that that's a very limited thing to ask for in terms of pitching. And I always encourage people to be creative and talk about the non-financial levels of support that they might be interested in. You have no idea who's in the room, and wonderful things have come out of these conversations where people weren't just doing a pitch specifically to the one funder that they knew could make their dreams come true. You can ask for a composer. If you are early career and you want to do an edit lab and get feedback, also great. If you want to use this film as sort of a way to leapfrog into a different career path, seeing if anyone knows about management or agents, you can use a pitch to do whatever to make it beneficial for your entire process of completing the film and not just getting the money to complete the one work. It's also good to have a sense of who you are specifically pitching to. If you're doing a pitch, most places will publish an industry attendance list. You will know all of the people that are in the room. It's a missed opportunity if you're only talking to one of them, because it is a big web of nerds who, if they get excited about something, even if I only fund development and I see your pitch and you're in post-production, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to call up the people who work at Catapult who only fund development and say, I just saw a cool pitch, they're going to apply to you, look out. And so just keeping in mind that this can be a broad conversation, and it is for the whole life of the film and not just specifically what feels like the urgent need in front of you now. All right, last W. Who are you? Why are you the best person to tell this story? Beyond identity markers, what is your personal connection to the story? What is your passion? Authentic stories are really rare, and so this is a place to really sort of hew to that authenticity and be honest about what is bringing you to this work. Making films is a really just a wild pursuit, and it's 7 years of relationships with people, kind of at best. And so what is making you, there are a lot of other hobbies and careers that suck less, or less lonely, and less expensive. So why are you doing this? Why can't you sleep at night without getting this project done? You can talk about your past successes or your team members' past successes. Do it briefly and do it only in a way that indicates how they will get this particular work completed. If you are fresh out of the gate and it's your first project, anyone else who's come on as a collaborator is a good indicator that you can get the thing done and that you're building out your world of people who can help you to get to the point where it's done. This is another good place to reiterate, while you're talking about your bona fides, why you're telling this story in this way and why you have this urgent feeling to do it right now. Your artistic vision should come across, and that we should be investing in you as an artist in addition to our interest in the topic. You also really do want to make sure everyone leaves knowing who your current supporters are. It's a tricky, nobody wants to be the first money in and take a chance, but they do want to be in a club with other cool kids. And it kind of just validates as well that there are people who are going to help you get the thing done, and that someone else also thinks that it's pretty cool. You can also talk about your community support and connections, and that being stakeholders in the community, because it also just kind of levels you up in terms of the way that you are going to do right by this story, which is very, very important for all of us. All right, real quick, last thing, and then I too am sick of my voice. We'll go to the next slide. talking about your sample. This is super prescriptive. Everything I'm saying is super prescriptive. Take of it what you need. Here are my 3 T's. Your timing for your sample in your pitch is 1,000% an individual thing, and it's something that will change over the course of the times you pitch the project, because you will see what questions people ask that your sample can answer. So you might start out with it, you might find out that it goes a little bit later. That may depend on whether it's basically just a shorthand for how to communicate information. That if it's an introduction to one of your participants, then you don't have to describe the things that are in the sample. Or if it's a visual reference that's like kind of hard to describe, you might want people to see that earlier. Otherwise, if you need a lot of backstory to understand it, scoot it to the end. Never start by just playing a sample without introducing yourself, and never end by just playing the sample and then walking off the stage. Both of those things are awkward. I told you, this is the prescriptive part. Tee it up. We can watch anything if we know what it is. And I will watch something that is, and we can watch other people's footage that's meant to like evoke the feeling of your film, a character study, a teaser. We can watch a rough assembly. We can watch something that's been super polished. If we don't know what it is, we spend a whole bunch of time in the first 30 seconds trying to situate ourselves, and we're not paying attention to what's happening then. So just say what it is, and then everybody's brain is free to actually pay attention to the sample. And again, most important, it should be 2 to 3 minutes long. These pitches are 7 to 10 minutes long, and your talking time is the time that you can never get back. It's the amazing interpersonal connection with all of your cool body language. And your sample is something you can send in an email. So keep it short, don't lose people's attention span, don't invite anyone to drift off and think about their laundry list while you're playing your sample. Okay, so that was a lot of talking, that was a lot of advice. It's maybe more helpful to see an example of what that means. So we'll go to the next slide. We're gonna have a very, very brave person come up and do a practice pitch. So big qualifier, this is a work in progress. This is a generous community space. We keep everything that we learn about this project in this space. It's really, really rad to have someone show this. But because it's early and because, it's meant for an educational purpose, don't tweet this, or do we even tweet anymore? Oh my God. This is the first time that's it. We're gonna exit. We're not exiting anything about this project. But yeah, and then just be mindful that this is really cool to do as an educational model. And so Merrill and I are going to give feedback after the presentation. We'll go next slide.
Thank you for that qualifier you gave. I feel like I'm about to get roasted, but hopefully not. Okay, guys, I'm Raiden, and this is what you're about to see is a fun project. I know at this festival and with documentary projects in general, there's a lot of social impact projects about very important and very serious topics, and this is not a project that is like that. Most of the things that I work on are deadly serious, but this to me is something that's fun, something that is a feel-good piece, and something that is very interesting. So I wonder if there are any vintage collectors in the audience. Anybody? What do you collect? Exactly, vintage 8mm and 16mm cameras. I also collect vintage camera equipment, and we collect vintage clothing, we collect vinyl records, and this project is about vintage Volkswagens. In particular, it's about one guy, his name is Sam. He's 33 years old, and his business is renovating old Volkswagens. All the vehicles that he works on were built before he was born. He's one of a handful of people in the whole state of Arkansas that even do this type of work. It's actually technically not just Volkswagens, it's anything with an air-cooled engine, so it's a very specific type of vintage vehicle. So Sam and I went to high school together, and we just started working on this project, just shooting around, and I think I found a story out of my shooting around with my high school friends. So I have a sample now. We can see the sample, right? And then I'll tell you a little more about it. Okay. Thank you. So I think what's interesting about this is not only Sam, as you could maybe tell in this video, I was focusing on Sam's renovation of one particular Volkswagen bus, a 1970 bus that he bought as his personal project. He also does client work, but this is his project, and I started kind of following him, taking apart this bus from the ground up and completely renovating it. He found this little origami from 1999 when he pulled out the cabinets in the bus, because this is an artifact. This had a family in it at one time going on road trips, you know, from 1970 to now. So not just Sam, though. There's a whole community of Volkswagen fanatics. They have these meetups. They bring their vintage Volkswagens. They come together. They look at each other's cars, and in a blend of old and new technology, they have forums online where they discuss how to do different repairs, because Sam kind of touched on it in the video, but in a modern car, if there's something wrong with, say, the tire pressure, you have a light on the dash that tells you that. If you have a check engine light that comes on your vehicle, you go to AutoZone, they plug in a diagnostic tool, and they can tell you what needs to be fixed. And that's not the case with these vehicles. It's all based on knowledge and experience that you have to get by learning or by connecting with someone else who does the same thing that you do. So I would like to continue on with this project. I am in, I guess, light production on the project, but I'm a team of just me right now. I shot that, I edited that, and I would like to bring on a cinematographer and another producer, and a sound person would be wonderful. But I have embarked on this project as a team of one for now. But in the future, I would like to go capture the meetups that Sam goes to. Once he finishes this bus, he's going to go drive it to a meetup. I miss the Eureka Springs meetup that they do every year in Arkansas, which is amazing. But he hopes to take this bus to Lake Havasu to a huge Volkswagen meetup in Arizona in January. So I would like to see the experience of taking a trip in these time capsule vehicles where it's not about constant notifications. It's a throwback to a simpler time when the world at least seemed less complicated than it seems today. I think that we could all take a little piece of that with us in our daily lives, to not feel so, compelled to watch a 2-second TikTok or compelled to pick up our phone and do something to bring us back to the present moment. And that's what these vehicles do for the passionate owners. I believe that this is a cool story that people can take something from and have a good time watching it. Did I address everything?
Good job.
We'll tell you.
I was trying to think of your 5 W's and then I trailed off.
I would be amazed if you're like, cool, W's, got it, go. That was amazing. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Everybody's sick of my voice. You want to go first?
Yeah.
Great.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone do crowd work in their pitch. And I feel like for a project that you're framing up front is like, this is fun. It worked really well. And you transitioned pretty seamlessly into what the topic of the film was. So that's not a thing we would ever advise anyone to do, but here you go. There's always an exception.
You should,
Yeah.
because that was awesome.
Yeah, that worked well.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed the first quote from your protagonist in the sample talking about the meditative nature of these vehicles. And then I think you could probably trim out sort of him revisiting that later in the clip if you want to shorten the clip a little bit. I think what's missing for me in the current version of this pitch is sort of like, is this a short or a feature? Like, where do you want this film to go? I think there's a lot here. I understand a lot about like the phase of production you're in right now, which is helpful. But I think, and actually the note about how many Volkswagen fanatics there are is really helpful, including the online forums note, really helpful for any like potential distributors. They want to hear that and know that like that's an avenue for outreach whenever they put this film out there, that they can connect with all of these like communities that are already plugged in and would want to watch this. So that was a really great note. But yeah, in general, I think what I'm missing is sort of what you see sort of like the overarching narrative, or what you're hoping the overarching narrative arc of the film to be, and kind of like where you want to see it out in the world.
I'm going to jump off of that because I think that I really appreciate seeing this pitch at this stage, because you are a one-person band and I can also see all of the pieces there. And I think it honestly just comes to organization. Like, I think that it's all there, and I think it's just where it goes. And I think that that's a really rad part of this experience, is that like the next time you do this, both you and the project will be in a slightly different place, and the way you organize your information might be slightly different. I agree that like the minute you said, I was like, no, don't talk to other people. And then it was perfect because you weren't actually like, that was so seamlessly integrated, and also got everyone here like totally locked in on you and not like looking at their phone. I thought it was an exceptional character intro, and when you introduce Sam as someone you've known from high school, it sets you up as like the best person to tell this story. You have a long relationship with this person, and it's elevating someone who could be very like mundane every day because you've known him forever to be this like exceptional person worthy of a spotlight. And I think that that's incredibly cool. I think it's honestly, it just becomes a little bit of an organizational thing, because I hear like when you're talking about the trip to Havasu, that is the urgency. That's I need a team to come. I need my team by January because we got to go. And that sort of suggests, beyond meeting this person and learning about his project, it is like, this is where we're going in the film. I'll echo Merrill. I think a little bit of the formal stuff around like, is it a short? Is it a feature? Is it a series? But you're in development, and so that's totally fine, and it's okay to just say I'm in development. I think asking for team is an amazing ask, especially in this room. Like, you really, there are so many people here who could be like, oh, I want to shoot this. I like this guy. I just like have a bunch of little hearts that I made. And so I'm just like, what's helpful that's not just like, I liked that. I think that you can, instead of saying that you missed Eureka Springs, say that you're going to swing back around to get it next year, because then that's also a map of like, are we just filming in January, or is January kind of, you're going to lead up to that and then kind of like pick up these travels. It gives us a sense of what your scale is. I want to know a little bit more about you as a filmmaker. And I want to know a little bit more about how you see some of these elements on screen. That I think the working on the car is super visual, and the like traveling is really visual, and the online community element, I'd be curious if that's context for an audience, or if we are going to see Sam engaging with them. What was my I had one other helpful thing to say, but I think that I'm going to throw that in the garbage and just say that it was really, I'm thrilled to have a chance to weigh in on this as it's early, because I love that you're saying like, this is fun, because there is a deeper level of like, what are people missing that they need to do this like very analog therapeutic work? And like, what will it mean for us to take 20 minutes to spend time with someone who's reminding us of that, as told by someone who's known him for a super long time? So thanks. That was the best.
That was great.
Thank you. Very helpful notes too. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. So this, I'm going to rip through this second part because I think we'd like to try to take a couple questions at the end. This section, Caitlin and I developed after a team of short documentary filmmakers we were working with were contacted by a streamer for a meeting. And we talked with them ahead of time about what they thought the meeting was going to be about. And then after the meeting, we got feedback from the filmmakers and actually a rep from that streamer that we know, and realized that there was a total disconnect of what both parties were expecting from that meeting and what that meeting was supposed to be about. You can go to the next slide. Social or interpersonal pitching is a thing I made up. Don't repeat it to people as though it means a real thing, but this is what this section is called. So what we're going to be talking about is any prearranged meeting or call where the expectation is for you to speak about yourself as a filmmaker or a project. And what I'm talking about is when you're being contacted by a rep from an organization or a company. There's some examples in the bullets here of how these kinds of loosely social coffee meetings can come about. And sort of the reason for this section too is that there's a lot of ways that this, and I'm talking about the industry side, by the way, I'm not talking about what's happening in this room. Caitlin and I disagree with a lot of the ways that the industry side actually functions. And also we feel like it's important to give some guidance to filmmakers, so it's up to them of how and when they want to navigate a broken system that is not in your favor. So I'm leaning into the prearranged meeting of this. If you go to the next slide, is that really? Okay. Here's some Getty images of Caitlin and I at festival parties where we're holding drinks. Our general rule is if you are at a party at a festival in the evening, all of the panels have wrapped, everyone's in a great mood, you see this rep from this company that you're like, I really need to talk to that person. Talk to them about a cool movie you saw that day, talk to them about a cool bird you saw on your walk to that party. Try not to pitch them because that is their moment of the day where they're like decompressing from the formality of the rest of the day. It's a great idea to kind of like socially meet these people and sort of form relationships with them, but this is not the moment to be pitching them because if you catch them at the wrong moment and they're tired and they're burnt out, you've like totally blown it and they're not gonna wanna hear about that project again. Next slide. Okay, so let's say you get this sort of short, vague email from this rep of this organization or this company that says, hey, I heard about your project. Could we get coffee? Would love to chat. What does that mean? How are you supposed to prepare for that? So number one, do as much research as you can about who this person is and what their company does. What is the range of money? If they're a funder or an investor, what is the range of money that they give out? What are the kinds of projects that they support? You're sort of also trying to like figure out why it is that they're contacting you. Does it feel like your project is a good fit for them? Caitlin has talked about the importance of speaking honestly in these kinds of meetings. So this can include, again, your current team, where your budget is at, where you're at in your production process. This is all really helpful information for this person to know about whether or not they kind of want to get on board with you at the current state of your film. Connect with your network about them. There are people in this field who are great, very smart, good taste, socially challenging. So if you have a friend that has worked with this agent, met with this publicist before, whoever it is, just say like, hey, can you give me any feedback you have on this person? Because if you know ahead of time that this is a strange person, you can feel more relaxed in that meeting that they're not being strange because of you, they're just a strange person. I mean, this is also good for vetting, like, how real is this if this person is coming to the table with money, is that real money? What is that? So anyone who's worked with them or has connected with them before can be really helpful for you to know how real this meeting is. this is my life coach thing of, when a company's interviewing you, you're also interviewing the company. Like, do you want to work with these people? Who are they? Do you have a good vibe? At the end of the day, when you're bringing people onto a documentary project, you are sort of getting in bed with each other for potentially several years. And you're also going to be navigating financial hiccups, all kinds of things going wrong. Is this going to be the right kind of relationship for you to be working through those sort of like tense hurdles with this person? Next slide, please. Set real expectations. So, these you can read these bullets. They're pretty obvious. The other part of setting realistic expectations is also about yourself. I don't like public speaking. I'm doing this because I care about our work. If you don't like taking one-on-one meetings with strangers, that's totally fair. If you have social anxiety or you're neurodivergent, and these meetings are very much about the sort of two layers of what this person is saying, and you're also trying to read kind of their responses to everything. What is their body language? Trying to feel out like what they're into of what you're talking about. If that's not your skill set, which is a very challenging skill set to have, bring a producer, bring anyone on your team with you that is better at navigating those meetings. You can bring a notebook where you've already written out all the kind of bullets that you want to maybe get through in this meeting so you don't get flustered and forget. Just set yourself up to be as successful as you can to navigate a potentially like confusing situation. Next slide, please. This morning there were a lot more industry people in here. I'm glad this is more filmmakers now, but this is sort of us saying, not all gatekeepers are bad people. Not all gatekeepers are trying to keep you away from resources. But that is true. I mean, there are a lot of great people who work in these positions that are working really hard to find and connect with artists and get resources to them. And they're often just super overworked and underpaid and doing their best. And if you catch them on a bad day, are you able to kind of bring yourself to work through that moment and not potentially burn a bridge with someone that maybe down the line could actually help you with something? Which is sort of like ultimately what these bullets are about down here of you want to be thinking of these meetings as related to your career path in this field, having a long line of work. It's not just about this immediate project that's in front of you and your urgent needs around it. Darcy actually gave an anecdote this morning about meeting with Hulu. The project she had wasn't a fit for them, but because she got along well with the Hulu rep she was meeting with, they called her back for a different project later, and she was able to be hired and funded for that. And so a lot of the time, it's not that your project isn't good or it's not about the merit of your work. It's about whether your project is fitting into their slate at that time, what kinds of resources are even available. And it's a musical chairs, right? This person could be working at a different company 3 years, 5 years from now, where they do have more money and they have you in mind of, I liked that person, I liked that project, and I liked that meeting, and I'm gonna reconnect with that person to get them access to the resources I have now. Next slide. Summary of what I just said. We have 5 minutes, so we wanted to leave some room for any questions folks might have.
Because no one's being brave, do I get to say my thing?
Yeah.
Do not follow someone into the bathroom and pitch your film. You laugh. I have had 4 conversations with people with a lot of money about times this year when they were followed into the bathroom, and everyone is excited, and that's it. That I too am excited, and if we had another hour, I'd just tell you all the times that I have messed up. But just know that is like, you can get someone's contact and send them an email, and that the bathroom is a sacred space where no documentary should be discussed.
Can you click to the next slide with our email address? There you go. If you do have questions in the future, feel free to get in touch with us. We have a lot of great programs throughout the year supporting short documentary filmmakers. One of our filmmakers is here. So happy to have her. So if you see any programs that come up that feel like a good fit for your project, please get in touch with us and let us know, and we'll walk you through that process. Thanks so much.